Let's continue our study in the Gospel of John. We're now in chapter 1, verse 43, going on to chapter 1, verse 51. Jesus calls two more disciples. So in this section, two more disciples are called, but here, unlike in the previous verses, John the Baptist is not mentioned. So in this way, the text has transitioned away from John the Baptist. Before departing to Galilee, the Lord calls two more disciples. He called one himself, and the other was called or invited by one of his new disciples. The declarations that these disciples make about Jesus and his declarations about them are very interesting. So, chapter 1, verse 43. The next day he wanted to go to Galilee, and he finds Philip, and Jesus says to him, "Follow me." The Lord Jesus himself takes the initiative to call Philip. In the gospel record, Philip doesn't stand out, other than the lists of the apostles in the synoptic gospels, and this event, we only see him in John chapter 6, verses 5, 6, 7. Philip does not understand that Jesus can provide enough bread for the great crowd. And then in 12, 21, and 22, Philip does not understand how we should answer the Greeks who want to see Jesus. And chapter 14, verses 8 and 9, Philip does not understand that whoever has seen Jesus has seen the Father. Not very exemplary notes about Philip. Morris notes that the calling of Philip shows that the Lord called and used ordinary people, not just people that might somehow be special, like Peter, or people with status, like Matthew the tax collector. So, looking at our verses, chapter 1, verse 44. Now, Philip was from Bethsaida, from the city of Andrew and Peter. According to Mark 1:21 and 29, Simon and Andrew's house was in Capernaum, not Bethsaida. But these two texts are not in contradiction if they were raised in Bethsaida, and at the time they were called, they were living in Capernaum. Chapter 1, verse 45. Philip finds Nathanael, and he says to him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and the prophets, Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth." Now, perhaps because time was short, Philip looked for Nathanael and told him about Jesus with sincere enthusiasm. According to Philip, Jesus was the one spoken of in Moses and the prophets. Philip's understanding was exceptional. Philip must have been searching the scriptures for all he could learn about the Messiah. This reminds us of the Lord's words to the two men on the road to Emmaus in Luke 24:13 through 32. In Luke 24:27 we read, "And beginning from Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself." In the first century, people were often identified with the following three pieces of information: the person's name, the name of his village, and the name of his father. And Philip followed that custom as he identified the Lord Jesus. Chapter 1, verse 46, "And Nathanael says to him, 'Can anything good be from Nazareth?' Philip says to him, 'Come and see.'" There's no proof from literature or archaeology that Nazareth was any more despised than any other city in Galilee, but Galilee was certainly despised by the people of Jerusalem and Judea. Morris notes that Nathanael, coming from a town called Cana, we see that in 21 verse 2, probably didn't really like Nazareth because a sharp rivalry existed between those two small nearby cities. Nathanael's declaration is ironic, and you might want to go back to the discussion of irony in the introductory videos. Can anything good be from Nazareth? That's very ironic because we know that the best came from Nazareth. Philip's invitation, "Come and see," becomes a challenge not only for Nathanael, but for each reader that hasn't yet believed in the Lord Jesus. In other words, all readers that don't yet know the Lord are invited to Come and see. Chapter 1, verse 47. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, and he says about him, "Look, a true Israelite in whom there is no cunning." When Jesus met Peter, he said something special about Peter in 1:42. So also when he meets Nathanael, he says something surprising. The reader is not told why the Lord Jesus says this, and this theme in the life of Nathanael is not developed in the Gospel of John. Nathanael is only mentioned here and in the events of 21, verse 2. The word cunning here, a true Israelite in whom there is no cunning. The word cunning here, it does carry an element of deception. This word was actually used, the Greek word was actually used about the Trojan horse. In the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament translation of the time, this term is used in Genesis 27:35 about Jacob's cunning deception towards Esau. The use of this term in Genesis 27:35 is more significant because later in this conversation, the Lord Jesus will mention Jacob's experience. Chapter 1, verse 51. Perhaps the Lord Jesus is using a word play to say that Nathanael is an Israelite without Jacob's deceitful character. The Lord Jesus is pleased with Nathanael's attitude of being willing to come and see, even if some hometown prejudice, being from Cana of Galilee, might make that more difficult. Thus, Nathanael represents Israelites who were willing to seek the truth, unlike those in chapter 9 who were not open to a very convincing proof of righteousness. Well, Nathanael represents those Israelites, but please remember that Nathanael was also a real historical person, not just a concept. But he did also represent that sort of Israelite. Well, chapter 1, verse 48. Nathanael says to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus replied and said to him, "Before Philip called to you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael's question makes sense. The Lord Jesus answered it, but his answer only adds to Nathanael's surprise and does not enlighten the reader at all. We can only understand that Nathanael got a revelation which is not available to us ordinary readers. What really happened? Why did this matter to Nathanael? In the literature of the rabbis of Israel, we read that they liked to study and meditate under a fig tree. That makes good sense because fig trees might give good shade. But the readers are not permitted to hear what Nathanael might have done under that fig tree. Did he pray? Did he confess? Did he meditate? We don't know. We are excluded from that information. But based on his reaction in the following verses, we can guess that this was a deep, private, and touching thing for Nathanael. But that's just a guess. That isn't really revealed to us. So here, early in the Gospel of John, we grasp a little secret about interpreting this book, that we need to differentiate between things that are revealed to be understood and things that are not explained and cannot be understood by the reader. In this event, for example, how the Lord Jesus knew Nathanael and what happened under that fig tree, it's not revealed to us. It was a private miracle for Nathanael. And we're not invited in on what that was. We only know that it really surprised Nathanael. We need to let the not knowing push us to search for and know the one who saw Nathanael under that fig tree. Chapter 1, verse 49. Nathanael replied and says to him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Wow, that is a really dramatic statement by Nathanael after hearing just the Lord say, "Before Philip called to you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." What happened that led to such a powerful confession of faith by Nathanael? You are the Son of God, the King of Israel. Nathanael, who earlier insulted the city of Nazareth, can anything good come from Nazareth? He's not insulting Nazareth any longer. All doubts have disappeared from his heart, and he makes an astonishing confession of faith. Surely this new disciple does not understand the full meaning of the expression Son of God. But even so, his confession is bold, and just the idea that this rabbi walking around was the King of Israel, even that alone is amazing. Apparently, in Nathanael's thinking, the Son of God and the King of Israel are parallel expressions. After studying the expression Son of God in Psalm 2, one can see that parallelism it's fitting. In Psalm 2:6, we read the words of the one who resides in heaven, and then in 7 through 9, we read the words of the King. In this text, God the Father explains that he has chosen someone to become the king, that person he will send to judge and inherit the earth. In the context there in Psalm 2, the term make my son means make a king, and the term son means king. So Nathanael is right to use the expression Son of God in a way that's parallel to the King of Israel. Nathanael must have known Psalm 2 pretty well. So we're not told why Nathanael uses words that appear to come from nowhere, this expression, you're the Son of God, you're the King of Israel. But Nathanael's faith can spread to us so that we want to know King Jesus of Nazareth in a deeper way. The expression King of Israel is only used 4 times in the whole New Testament, but apparently it's similar, almost the same as Christ or Messiah, the anointed King. Chapter 1, verse 50. Jesus replied and said to him, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than this. Now, according to this translation, his answer is a question, but we do understand that in the original languages, they didn't use question marks. So our placing a question mark in this at the end of that sentence is a matter of interpretation. Perhaps this is a rhetorical question, a question that doesn't need to be answered, but seems best to say, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? It could be, you believe. Well, we don't know for sure, but this is a good translation. Do you believe? You will see greater things than this. In his answer, the Lord Jesus praises Nathanael's faith and confession. Based on this text and 2:23 and 20:29, that's chapter 2, verse 23 and chapter 20, verse 29, it can be said that the Lord Jesus values a faith based on his words more highly than a faith based on miraculous signs or some other proof. Well, that idea will be developed in the Gospel of John. All faith in Jesus saves, but the Lord seems to place a higher value on faith based on his word, faith based on witness, rather than faith based on seeing a miracle. So we want to see more about that in the Gospel of John. And the expression greater things than this will be explained in more detail in the very next verse. Chapter 1, verse 51. And he says to them, truly, truly, I say to you, from now you shall see the heavens opened and the angels of God going up and down upon the Son of Man. Nathanael is amazed when the Lord Jesus tells him he saw him under the fig tree, but the Lord promises that he will see greater things than this. The Lord doesn't rebuke him. He encourages Nathanael. It's as if he said, guard the faith that has just been born. Develop your faith, because your faith is true, and you will see something more glorious. Get ready, Nathanael. The commentary writer Michaels reminds us that the connection with Jacob's ladder in 28:12 is far from obvious. No ladder is actually mentioned here. Nathanael calls the Lord Jesus Son of God, but the Lord Jesus referred to himself here as Son of Man. The expression Son of Man is not used in Jewish literature outside the Bible, but this expression is used 182 times in the whole Bible with different meanings. In Numbers 23:19 and Job 25:6 and Psalm 8:4 and 144:3, this expression just means man. In Ezekiel, it's used 93 times for Ezekiel himself, and once in Daniel 8:17 for the prophet Daniel. But in Daniel 7:13 and 14, we read, listen to this, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence." Verse 14, "He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All peoples, nations, and men of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. This is one like a son of man." Well, for Daniel, the term Son of Man can mean Messiah, the king appointed by God himself, who will set up a glorious and eternal kingdom. The expression Son of Man is fitting here because this world was made to be subject to a man, Adam, but he failed, and the second Adam, the Son of Man, will become king. Carson and Morris are two commentary writers that say that the expression Son of Man is used by the Lord Jesus because it doesn't yet have a clear meaning for the Jews. And so the Lord Jesus can, so to speak, fill the term up with the meaning that he wants to fill it up with. If, for example, he often called himself the King of Israel, well, the people who would hear him would understand that he's the king they hoped would come and destroy the Roman Empire. But that's just not the case with the expression Son of Man. Everybody was a little bit confused about what did he mean when he said Son of Man. And we will need to read the fourth gospel to understand more about this expression Son of Man. This conversation that the Lord Jesus had with Nathanael can be applied in our lives. What has God done for us? For the Lord Jesus, this is a small matter. Maybe your prayers have been answered, or comfort has been given to you through an old friend. Allow these things to amaze you as they do Nathanael. Let these things pull us to faith in him ever closer. But we also need to remember that these things are small and have less meaning than compared to the glory which we will see in his day.